Emily Johnson was one of the most respected lawyers in New York, known for her passionate defense of human rights and her tireless dedication to social justice. At 42 years old, she had built a solid career and an untouchable reputation. However, behind her impeccable professional facade, there was a story of deep loss that Emily rarely shared. 20 years earlier, Emily was engaged to Michael, a talented and idealistic young doctor. They met in college, where Michael was studying medicine and Emily, law. The connection between them was immediate, and they soon became inseparable. Their relationship was a safe harbor, full of love and plans for the future. They dreamed of building a life together, with Michael dedicating himself to medicine and Emily to justice. The symbol of this love was a wristwatch that Michael always wore, a graduation gift from his parents with a special inscription, "To Michael, with eternal love, E." Tragically, all these dreams were destroyed when Michael died in a car accident. He was returning from a medical conference when the accident occurred, leaving Emily devastated and heartbroken. The watch, which Michael wore every day, disappeared in the chaos that followed his death, leaving Emily with an even greater sense of loss. Despite all her efforts to find the watch, it remained missing, a tangible symbol of what had been taken from her. Emily threw herself into her career to deal with the pain, channeling her suffering into her pursuit of justice. She became a fierce advocate for the rights of the underprivileged, using her own loss as fuel to fight for others. Over the years, she became a prominent figure in the legal community, but the shadow of Michael and the mystery of the lost watch never fully left her. On an autumn day, while walking through Central Park on her way to a meeting, Emily saw something that made her stop. A street vendor was displaying various items on a small makeshift table, including watches. Something about the display caught her attention, and as she approached, her heart stopped for a moment. There, among the watches, was Michael's watch. She recognized it instantly by the worn leather strap and the classic design. Approaching closer, Emily asked to see the watch up close. With the watch in her hands, Emily turned it over and saw the inscription that confirmed her suspicions. "To Michael, with eternal love, E." She felt a wave of emotions, joy, sadness, disbelief, all at once. The watch that had disappeared 20 years ago, which she believed to be lost forever, was now there, in her hands. But along with the surprise came questions. How did Michael's watch end up there? Who had it before? She turned to the vendor, a middle-aged man with a tired look, and asked in a trembling voice, "Where did you get this watch?" The vendor, sensing the seriousness in Emily's voice, replied, "I bought it from a man a few weeks ago. He seemed to need money and was selling some things. I don't know anything more than that. Do you want to buy it?" Emily, trying to process the information, quickly agreed to buy the watch, paying the asking price without question. As she put the watch away, a sense of urgency overcame her. She knew she needed to find out more about how the watch had ended up there and what had happened to the man who sold it. She asked the vendor if he had any more information about the man, but he could only say that the man left no contact information and seemed to be in distress. With few leads, Emily knew her only chance to get answers was to follow this thin trail while it was still fresh. She decided to use her resources as a lawyer to investigate as much as she could about the original seller and the watch's whereabouts over the past 20 years. This unexpected encounter in the park stirred not only painful memories but also a renewed determination in Emily. The watch was more than just an object. It was a connection to Michael and the past she had never been able to let go of. Now, with Michael's watch back in her hands, Emily was determined to uncover the truth, no matter where it led. She was about to embark on a journey of revelations that would forever change her perception of the past and present. With Michael's watch in her possession, Emily felt a mix of relief and unease. The reunion with the watch, after 2 decades, brought to the surface a series of long-suppressed emotions. She knew she needed to find out how the watch had ended up in the hands of the street vendor and, more importantly, what it could reveal about Michael's last moments. Emily decided she would use her investigative skills as a lawyer to follow any possible leads. In the following days, Emily began her investigation. She returned to Central Park several times, hoping to find the street vendor or anyone who might have seen him again. However, her attempts were in vain. The vendor seemed to have disappeared, leaving Emily without immediate answers. Determined not to give up, she turned to other methods. Emily used her connections in the city, including contacts in the police and the legal sector, to try to trace the man who had sold the watch to the vendor. Simultaneously, Emily decided to examine Michael's watch more closely. She remembered that Michael, who had a habit of noting important things, sometimes made small recordings or marks on personal items. Using a magnifying glass and a bright light, she inspected the watch for any detail that might have gone unnoticed. It was then that Emily noticed something peculiar on the inside of the leather strap. Discreetly and almost invisibly engraved, there was a series of numbers and letters. It looked like a code or a combination of date and address. The code read October 15th, 01, 458, West 24th Street. Emily felt her heart race. She couldn't remember Michael ever mentioning this specific address or date, but the code clearly seemed important. Emily knew she had to find out what it meant. Determined to follow this new lead, Emily called her longtime friend David, an experienced private detective. David was someone Emily trusted completely and who had helped her in complex cases in the past. When Emily explained the situation, including the reunion with the watch and the discovery of the code, David agreed to help her investigate. They decided to start by checking the address mentioned in the code. The address 458 West 24th Street led to an old building in the Chelsea neighborhood of Manhattan. Upon arriving at the location, Emily and David discovered that the building had undergone several transformations over the years. Currently, it housed a series of small businesses and offices. Emily and David began asking around, trying to find out if anyone knew anything about the building's history or remembered Michael. After several unsuccessful attempts, they finally found an elderly woman who remembered the building before it was renovated. She recounted that about 20 years ago, the building housed a medical clinic called Hope Clinic. The clinic was known for conducting medical research and experimental clinical studies. The woman mentioned that the clinic closed abruptly and many of the records and equipment were removed or destroyed. Intrigued, Emily began piecing things together. Michael had never mentioned being involved in a clinical study or experimental research, but the code engraved on the watch suggested he had some connection to the clinic. Emily felt she was getting closer to something important, something that could shed light on Michael's last months. David, always meticulous, suggested they check if there were any public records about the clinic and its staff. They found some old records in the public library and online, including mentions of a Dr. James Reynolds, who appeared to have been the director of the clinic at the time. Emily decided the next step was to find Dr. Reynolds and learn what he knew about Michael and the clinic. However, before moving to the next step, Emily decided to take one last look at the watch, feeling there might be more to discover. As she did, she noticed a small compartment on the back of the watch that she hadn't seen before. Carefully, she opened the compartment and found a small memory card hidden inside. Emily was surprised by the discovery, wondering what might be stored there. She and David immediately went to a computer specialist to recover the data from the memory card. What they found was surprising. There were audio and video recordings of Michael, where he discussed his concerns about a clinical study he was involved in. Michael seemed tense and worried, mentioning that he had discovered inconsistencies in the data and feared something was wrong. The recordings indicated that Michael was investigating something serious and felt his own safety might be at risk. Emily was shocked and confused. How had Michael never mentioned any of this to her? What had he discovered? And most importantly, could this be related to his death? Emily knew the next step was to find Dr. Reynolds and uncover the truth. The presence of the memory card and Michael's recordings suggested there was much more to this story than she could have ever imagined. Determined to find answers, Emily prepared to confront Michael's past and discover what really happened at the Hope Clinic. After the shocking revelation of Michael's recordings found in the watch, Emily was determined to uncover the full truth about his involvement with the Hope Clinic. The recordings indicated that Michael was investigating something dangerous and felt his safety was at risk. With this new information, Emily knew she needed to locate Dr. James Reynolds, the former director of the clinic, and understand what was happening. Emily and David began their search for Dr. Reynolds, using available contacts and resources. They discovered that he was still active in the medical community, now working at a different hospital. Emily managed to schedule a meeting with him, presenting herself as a lawyer interested in clarifying events from the past. She decided to keep the discovery of the recordings a secret for the moment, to observe Dr. Reynolds' reaction. During the meeting, Emily noticed that Dr. Reynolds seemed uncomfortable mentioning the Hope Clinic. He explained that the clinic had specialized in experimental medical research, including an innovative study on gene therapy. Dr. Reynolds stated that the clinic was known for its pioneering approach and use of new technologies, attracting many talented professionals, including Michael. When Emily mentioned Michael and his involvement with the clinic, Dr. Reynolds confirmed that he was part of the medical team collaborating on the study. However, he quickly tried to downplay Michael's role, claiming he was only assisting and did not have full access to critical study data. Emily, sensing that Dr. Reynolds was hiding something, pressed him for more information. Dr. Reynolds hesitated before revealing that, shortly before his death, Michael had expressed concerns about the study's results. He suspected that the data was being manipulated to hide serious side effects of the experimental treatment. Michael believed that the treatment, rather than being a revolutionary solution, could be causing significant harm to patients. Dr. Reynolds tried to reassure Michael, saying the data was still being analyzed and there was no cause for alarm. Emily, now aware that Michael was onto something much bigger than initially thought, questioned Dr. Reynolds about what happened after Michael raised his concerns. Dr. Reynolds, visibly uncomfortable, admitted that Michael began to investigate further, reviewing medical records and consulting with other specialists. He mentioned that Michael was determined to find the truth, even if it meant challenging the clinic's directors. Dr. Reynolds explained that the situation became tense, with Michael insisting on taking his findings to the authorities. However, before he could take any concrete action, Michael died in the car accident. Dr. Reynolds claimed the accident was an unfortunate coincidence and that the clinic closed shortly after the incident due to lack of funding and controversy over the study's results. Emily, still suspicious, asked if there were any records or documents from the time that could provide more information about the study and the events leading to the clinic's closure. Dr. Reynolds claimed that many of the documents were destroyed or lost when the clinic closed, but suggested that some copies might be archived in an old clinic storage. Determined to find more evidence, Emily and David went to the storage mentioned by Dr. Reynolds. Upon arrival, they discovered the storage was abandoned and in poor condition. Through a broken window, They managed to enter and began searching for anything that might shed light on the situation. The place was filled with dusty boxes and files, many of which had been damaged by water and time. After hours of searching, Emily found a box labeled Gene Therapy Study 2001. Inside the box were a series of documents, including research reports, meeting notes, and internal correspondence. Emily began reviewing the papers and soon found a report that seemed to confirm Michael's suspicions. There was a significant discrepancy in patient data, indicating that side effects were underestimated or completely omitted. Additionally, Emily found internal emails between Dr. Reynolds and other members of the executive team discussing how to manage Michael's findings and minimize damage to the clinic's reputation. It was clear there was a deliberate attempt to cover up the issues and silence any dissent. Emily realized she was holding evidence of a conspiracy that might have cost Michael his life. Among the documents, Emily also found a list of patients who participated in the study. Determined to understand the full impact of the treatment, she and David began tracking down these patients. They discovered that many had suffered severe complications, and some had even died. Emily knew these findings needed to be shared with the authorities, but she wanted to confront Dr. Reynolds one last time before doing so. With overwhelming evidence in hand, Emily scheduled another meeting with Dr. Reynolds. This time, she did not hesitate to show the documents she found and demand answers. Dr. Reynolds, confronted with the evidence, finally broke down. He admitted that the pressure to keep the clinic open and fund the research led them to hide the negative results. He also confessed that he was aware of the threats made to Michael to stop him from speaking out, although he claimed he never thought those threats would be taken seriously. Emily, now aware of the extent of the cover-up, knew she had a greater responsibility: to seek justice for Michael and the patients who had been harmed. She decided to take the evidence to the authorities and the media, ensuring that the truth was revealed and those responsible were held accountable. With the confession of Dr. Reynolds and the evidence collected, Emily was more determined than ever to ensure that all those responsible were brought to justice. The media began to cover the case intensely, revealing details about the cover-up and the tragic consequences for many of the patients at the Hope Clinic. Public pressure mounted, and authorities intensified their investigations. Emily, alongside David, focused her efforts on understanding the extent of the impact of the compromised clinical study. They began contacting the patients listed in the records they had found in the abandoned storage. Many of these patients had suffered serious complications, and some had already passed away. Emily and David heard devastating stories from families who had lost loved ones and from people still struggling with the consequences of poorly administered treatments. Among these stories, one particularly caught Emily's attention: that of a woman named Linda, whose teenage daughter, Rachel, had participated in the study. Rachel suffered from a rare genetic condition, and the family had hoped the experimental treatment might offer a cure or at least significant improvement in her quality of life. However, after receiving the treatment, Rachel began experiencing severe side effects that progressively worsened, leading to her premature death. Linda, devastated by the loss of her daughter, became a vocal advocate for patients' rights and transparency in medical research. She told Emily that at the time, she had tried to get answers from the clinic about the side effects and safety of the treatment, but was ignored or met with evasive responses. Linda said she suspected something was wrong but felt powerless to act. With Emily's support, Linda agreed to share her story publicly, becoming one of the most visible faces of the tragedy surrounding the Hope Clinic. Her courage in speaking out sparked a wave of public support and brought even more attention to the case. Other patients and families began to come forward, revealing the true extent of the damage caused by the experimental treatment. Meanwhile, Investigations continued to uncover a network of corruption that included not only the clinic staff, but also senior executives at the pharmaceutical company that funded the research. It was discovered that the company had invested millions of dollars in the study and was desperate to present positive results, even if it meant manipulating data and hiding critical information about the treatment's risks. Authorities found that several members of the clinic's management and the pharmaceutical company were aware of the problems from the start, but chose to continue the study to protect their investments. Internal documents and emails showed there were discussions on how to manage the information and prevent regulators from discovering the truth. Data manipulation and evidence destruction were part of a deliberate strategy to cover up the negative effects of the treatment. With these revelations, several arrests were made, including the clinic's director and executives from the pharmaceutical company. Public pressure also led to a broader review of medical research practices and safety regulations for clinical trials. The Hope Clinic case became a pivotal example of the dangers of unethical research and the need for greater oversight and transparency. Throughout this process, Emily remained focused on seeking justice not only for Michael but for all the patients affected. She helped the families organize a class action lawsuit against the clinic and the pharmaceutical company, seeking compensation for the damages caused. Emily also worked with legislators to promote reforms that would ensure greater protection for patients and transparency in research processes. The case attracted international attention, and Emily was invited to speak at conferences and events on medical ethics and patients' rights. She used these platforms to highlight the need for greater accountability in medical research and to honor Michael's memory, who risked everything to try to expose the truth. In the midst of all this, Emily also found support from friends, family, and colleagues who admired her courage and determination. David, who had stood by her throughout the investigation, became a close friend and confidant. They often reflected on the challenges they faced and the importance of their actions in ensuring something like this never happened again. As events unfolded, Emily finally began to find a measure of peace. Although the pain of losing Michael never completely faded, she felt she had honored his memory by fighting for the truth and justice. The process of bringing those responsible to justice and helping the affected patients brought a renewed sense of purpose to her life. Emily continued to be involved in social justice causes and advocate for the rights of the most vulnerable. Michael's story, the fight against corruption in medical research, and the courage of the affected families served as a constant reminder of the importance of integrity, transparency, and compassion in her work. With the investigations advancing and the public increasingly aware of the Hope Clinic case, Emily felt that the truth was finally emerging. However, she knew that the battle was far from over. Those responsible for the unscrupulous actions still needed to be fully held accountable, and the system that allowed such abuses needed serious reform. Emily continued her fight alongside the affected families, seeking justice and change. During the investigation, authorities uncovered a vast network of collusion between the clinic's directors and senior executives at the pharmaceutical company that funded the experimental study. The evidence showed there was active collaboration to hide the serious side effects of the treatment and manipulate the clinical trial results. The pharmaceutical company was desperate to gain regulatory approval and launch the treatment on the market, driven by the prospect of massive profits. Emily and David, working tirelessly, found more documents and witnesses that corroborated the extent of the conspiracy. They discovered the company had paid generous sums of money to bribe clinic employees and ensure any negative data was suppressed. Additionally, there were indications that the company tried to influence regulators and politicians to facilitate the treatment's approval, despite the known risks. One of the most disturbing discoveries was the revelation that Michael was not the only person who tried to expose the truth. Other clinic employees also raised concerns but were quickly silenced or fired. Michael, with his unwavering ethics and determination, became a bigger target because he refused to give in to the pressures. The investigation suggested that the threats he received were not only legal but also physical, indicating a clear intention to intimidate him and prevent him from acting. As more details emerged, it became clear that Michael's death, while officially recorded as a car accident, raised serious questions. The police reopened the case to investigate whether there was tampering or sabotage of Michael's vehicle. Emily, devastated by the possibility that Michael's death could have been orchestrated, became even more determined to see justice fully realized. The case gained international proportions, with the media intensely covering every development. Emily, now a central figure in the fight for justice, used her platform to denounce not only the actions of the clinic and the pharmaceutical company, but also the systemic failures that allowed such abuses to flourish. She called for comprehensive reforms in drug approval processes and greater transparency in medical research. Meanwhile, pressure on the pharmaceutical company increased. Investors began withdrawing their support, and lawsuits were filed by patients and their families seeking compensation for the damages caused. The company, facing a reputation and financial crisis, tried to defend its actions by claiming they were acting in the best interests of science and medicine. However, the evidence presented by Emily and other lawyers dismantled this defense, showing that the pursuit of profit had outweighed any ethical or scientific considerations. In an attempt to mitigate the damage, the pharmaceutical company began offering financial settlements to the affected families, but many refused, insisting on a judicial resolution that fully acknowledged the wrongdoing. Linda, Rachel's mother, became a vocal leader among the plaintiffs, demanding that the truth be fully exposed and systemic reforms implemented to protect future patients. As the case approached trial, Emily continued to work with tireless determination. She knew this was a crucial moment not only for the affected families, but also for the future of ethical medical research. She collaborated with medical ethics experts, doctors, and patient rights advocates to formulate policy recommendations that could prevent similar abuses in the future. In court, key witnesses included former employees of the clinic and the pharmaceutical company, many of whom, pressured by the investigation, decided to cooperate in exchange for reduced sentences. The witnesses revealed shocking details about the culture of fear and intimidation within the clinic, where any dissent was quickly silenced. They described secret meetings where ways to hide negative data and manipulate records to make the treatment appear safe and effective were discussed. During the trial, Emily presented Michael's recordings as evidence, showing his commitment to the truth and his genuine concern for patient safety. The recordings moved the court and the public, highlighting Michael's ethical character and the tragedy of his loss. The evidence also included internal emails and documents proving the conspiracy to cover up the side effects and manipulate the study results. The defenses of the clinic and the pharmaceutical company were quickly dismantled. The jury deliberated and, after a trial that lasted weeks, found the defendants guilty of fraud, negligence, and conspiracy. The clinic was permanently closed, and the executives involved received severe sentences. The pharmaceutical company was fined millions of dollars and forced to implement significant changes in its research practices and transparency. With the verdict, Emily felt a mix of relief and sadness. Justice had been served, but nothing could bring back Michael or fully compensate the affected families. However, she knew the case had made a lasting impact, raising important questions about ethics and responsibility in medical research. Emily continued to advocate for the cause, working to ensure that the promised reforms were truly implemented and that the voices of patients and their families were heard. She also created a foundation in Michael's name to promote ethical medical research and support patients and families affected by medical misconduct. The Hope Clinic case became a symbol of resilience and the pursuit of justice. Emily, alongside Linda and other families, continued to use their experiences to educate the public and push for change. Michael's legacy of integrity and commitment to the truth became an inspiration for many in the medical community and beyond. After the guilty verdict against those responsible for the Hope Clinic and the pharmaceutical company involved, the case became a turning point for medical research and regulatory practices. Emily, still driven by Michael's memory and the pain of the affected families, knew her mission to promote ethics and transparency in medicine was just beginning. The Michael Foundation for Medical Ethics, which she had established, became a beacon of hope and a vital resource for patients and medical professionals nationwide. Michael's legacy, as a dedicated doctor who died seeking the truth, became the heart of the foundation. Emily worked tirelessly to ensure Michael's memory continued to inspire others. The foundation launched several initiatives, including a scholarship program for medical students interested in medical ethics and a series of workshops and seminars focused on ethical practices in clinical research. One of the foundation's first projects was creating an online resource center offering detailed information about patient rights, the importance of informed consent, and how to identify and report unethical medical practices. Emily and her team collaborated with universities and health organizations to develop educational materials, helping educate both the public and healthcare professionals on maintaining the highest ethical standards in their practices. Michael's story, which was once a personal tragedy for Emily, now served as a powerful example of integrity and courage. The Michael Foundation began awarding an annual prize in his name, recognizing healthcare professionals and researchers who demonstrated exceptional commitment to ethics and justice. This award not only celebrated the work of inspiring individuals, but also helped raise awareness about the importance of ethics in medicine. As the foundation grew, Emily continued to receive invitations to speak at international conferences and collaborate on global medical ethics initiatives. She was invited to participate in expert panels and working groups, contributing to policy formulation aimed at improving transparency and accountability in medical research worldwide. Emily's experience and passion for justice made her a respected and influential voice in the field. Linda, Rachel's mother, became an active patient rights advocate and an essential member of the foundation. She led awareness campaigns and became a public speaker, sharing her daughter's story and highlighting the need to protect patients from negligent and unethical practices. Her courage and determination inspired many other families to speak out and seek justice. The discovery of sabotage in Michael's car led to further investigations and eventually more arrests. It was revealed that individuals linked to the pharmaceutical company were involved in tampering with the vehicle, trying to silence Michael once and for all. The new evidence brought more convictions and sanctions, and those responsible were brought to justice. For Emily, the confirmation that Michael's death was not accidental brought a bitter closure, but also reinforced her determination to continue the fight. Emily decided to write a book, The Price of Truth, detailing her journey from losing Michael to uncovering the Hope Clinic scandal and the subsequent battles for justice. The book was not only a tribute to Michael, but also a call to arms for the medical community and the public, highlighting the importance of ethical vigilance and integrity. The Price of Truth became a bestseller, touching the hearts of many and further raising awareness about the dangers of ethical negligence in medicine. In addition to the book, the Michael Foundation for Medical Ethics launched a national awareness campaign called Truth in Medicine, aimed at educating the public about their rights as patients and the importance of transparency in healthcare. The campaign included public service announcements, community events, and online resources, reaching millions and promoting a national dialogue on medical ethics. Emily also began engaging in public policy initiatives, working with legislators to strengthen medical research regulations and ensure that patient protections were robust and effective. She advocated for laws requiring greater transparency from pharmaceutical companies and increasing penalties for ethical misconduct. Her work helped shape a new era of accountability and ethics in medicine. As time passed, the Michael Foundation became a respected and influential organization, known for its tireless advocacy for patient rights and the promotion of medical ethics. Emily, although still feeling the loss of Michael deeply, found a new purpose in her work. She continued to inspire many with her story and dedication to the cause. In the end, Emily felt she had fulfilled the promise she made to Michael, to fight for the truth and ensure his death was not in vain. Michael's legacy lived on, not only through the foundation and the changes it promoted, but also in the lives it touched and the future generations of doctors and patients who would benefit from a more transparent and ethical healthcare system. Emily, now a prominent and respected figure, reflected on all she had accomplished. She knew that as long as there were challenges in medicine and research, her work would never be completely finished. But with each victory, each life touched, and each change implemented, she felt she was making a real difference. And that, thought Emily, was Michael's true legacy. An unwavering commitment to truth and justice, an unrelenting pursuit of the greater good. The story of Emily, Michael, and the families who came together to demand justice became a powerful lesson in courage and integrity. And as the world continued to move forward, Michael's memory and Emily's work continued to shine as a beacon of hope and inspiration for all who believed in a more just and ethical future.